Hi, and welcome into the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Payne. This week, we have just a fun episode. This is the 200th episode of the Cool Grandpa Podcast. My guest and the person that's going to do, I guess, a takeover of the podcast is Steve Owens from Fascination Street. And Steve is a great friend and a mentor and somebody that's helped me out a lot over the 4 years it's taken me to get to episode 200. I also want to mention as we get going, we talked about this a little bit, but I do have some merchandise that is now live in the bookstore. So I've got some polo shirts, some hats, a couple of tumblers, a mug, I think a coaster or two. So not a lot, but some of these things have just the Cool Grandpa logo, similar to the polo shirt that I wear that you can see in some of the YouTube videos. And then I've got some other ones too that actually say like One Cool Grandpa with the logo. So check it out. It's in the bookstore. And, if you like something, if you got a grandfather in your life and you want to get them something cool, check out the merchandise. I think this would be a great opportunity to get them something that would recognize them being a cool grandpa. Now, I also want to take an opportunity to definitely thank my wife, Karen Mangum, for helping me on this journey. We thank her publicly on this. There's also a lot of other people that have helped me out on this journey as well, and you know who you are, and I thank you. The list is way too long. I would be like an Academy Award speech here trying to thank everybody, but for everybody that's been a guest, that's been a mentor, that's been a friend, I really do appreciate everything that you have done to support me, encourage me, and, just help me keep moving forward with this Cool Grandpa podcast and this project and journey that I'm on. So, cool kids, without any further ado, let's jump into this very cool conversation with Steve Owens. Hi, and welcome into the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is our 200th show, and I am super excited to have one of my buddies, mentors, Steve Owen from Fascination Street Podcast is on to help me celebrate and have just a fantastic 200th episode today. So thank you, Steve, for taking time out of your day to join me and talk about the Cool Grandpa Podcast.
Well, first, Greg, let me say this. You have no idea how many people don't make it to 100, let alone 200. I think I see right behind you over there, you got a little present for your 100th anniversary. Expect something. As we record this, you haven't quite hit 200 yet, so no spoiler alert. Expect something cool to show up in the mail here in a couple of weeks. But bro, oh my goodness, 200 episodes. First, I gave you the clap. Well, that sounds weird. I clapped for you at the beginning, but seriously, over the 7 years that I've been doing my show, I have quote unquote mentor with a small m, lowercase mentored. I've helped some podcasters start up and I've helped them struggle through some things. But of all of the podcasters that I have helped, which is probably close to 20, only one got to episode 100. And of those one, can you guess how many got to episode 200?
Oh, I hope it's me.
You are correct. That is how it worked.
Awesome.
You are amazing. Even my wife was so excited that you got to 200. She's like, "Oh my gosh, the Cool Grandpa!" And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Wait, that's the same guy he's my grandpa's grandpa, right?" And I said, "Yes, he is that guy." She's like, "Oh my gosh, I love him so much." Now, I hope it's okay with you, Greg. It's gonna be a little bit of a takeover here, sort of a mashup or a crossover. No, it's just a takeover. I'm taking over your show, my friend.
By all means.
Greg Payne, the Cool Grandpa himself. I have tons of questions, but first we're going to go all the way back. We're going to get into the Wayback Machine, and we're going to go back to May 2nd, 2020. Everybody on the planet was mired in COVID Everybody was suffering from COVID. We're freaking out. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't even know if we're going to see our neighbors again. What did you decide to do? You said, you know what, COVID? You can't stop me. You can't keep a cool grandpa down. I'm going to start my own podcast. Now, I say a second, 2020, but that's when episode 2 came out. So I have multiple questions. The first one is, dude, where did episode 1 go?
It should be there. I might have to go back and re-release that. I don't know.
You might have to, because I was looking for it, and I know that I'm not the smartest kid on the planet, but I am not seeing. Wait, hold on, wait. Yeah, I don't see it anywhere, man. I got nothing for episode 1. So that means that it came out before May. So your show started, let's go with April.
Yep.
Of 2020 during COVID. Now, first of all, what made you decide you wanted to do a podcast at all, much less one focusing on grandfathers?
Well, I thought the best way I could talk to other grandfathers and talk to other people around this topic is if I had a podcast. I think just calling people up and just asking them questions, inviting them to dinner, I'd probably get a lot of yeses, but then also probably get a lot of, well, let me check my schedule and I'll get back to you. But I figured with a podcast, people might be a little bit more inclined to say yes. And it would be an absolute fantastic way to keep kind of a documentation of what I'm talking to people about and be able to, mine that for data later or come up with interesting stories down the road.
Well, I commend that. And I think you're right. People would say, hell yeah, I like free food. But then they would be like, wait, what are we talking about? Why? Who are you? How'd you get this number? So I guess my next question is, why did you feel the need to connect with people on the grandpa level? Like, I know it's grandpas and grandkids and, all of the things that encompass grandparents, basically, going both directions, whether you're a grandpa or whether you have a grandpa. And occasionally it has ventured into, the grandmas. But why was this subject so important to you? Why did you think that this needed to be a subject that was talked about?
Well, I think on 2 levels. One, I wanted to be a good grandpa. Like most other people that come into these roles, I've never done this before. I've seen some different examples, but I wanted to hear from people that I thought had successful relationships, were doing things what I thought would be really cool to incorporate into what I do with my grandkids. And also, not mess up those relationships. I think sometimes we hear about those stories too of people just miscommunicating, stepping on toes, doing the wrong thing. And I didn't want to do that. The other part of that too is I wanted something that was going to kind of wave the flag a little bit and go, hey, wait a second. We hear all this great stuff about grandmas, but grandpas in that relationship is special and different. And I think I want to try to celebrate that a little bit, put that out into the world. Just so that grandpas kind of step forward a little bit if they're hesitant, and then also making sure that people leave some space for grandpas to be involved in that family.
I am going to have to push back a little bit. You said you felt like grandpas needed basically a cheerleader because everybody talks about the impact of grandmas. I've not heard any of this talk of impact on grandmas. Is that a thing that people talk about? People are like, hey, my grandma this and my grandma that?
It is. And you would be surprised with how many grandpa or a grandma related podcasts or grandma related articles and journals and everything that are out there. And even some of the things that are around grandparenting tends to be more focused on what grandmas are doing versus grandpas.
You're right. I would be surprised. This is all news to me. My father's parents, they passed away. I think I was 5 when one passed away and 6 when the other one passed away. So there's not a whole lot of memory there about them. So as far as I can remember, there wasn't a huge impact on either of them in my life. But then my mom's parents, I don't have a whole lot of nice things to say about them. And neither does my sister, I found out recently. So maybe they should have tuned in to your show and got some pointers.
Yeah, well, I'll have to get the DeLorean up to 88 and jump back and start maybe doing a radio program.
Oh, yes. Oh, that'd be great. And then you can talk like this. See? Oh, that'd be great. Okay, so we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to probably jump all over the place if that's okay with you. So I asked you why you started a podcast. That's cool. Great. And I asked you why you wanted it to be focused on grandfathers. That's cool too. What did your wife say when you, like most wives go, what's a podcast? But what did your wife say when you said, hey, here's what I want to do? I want to start a podcast where I find out how to be and help everybody else find out how to be a cool grandpa. What's your wife say? What's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Karen.
Karen, I just want to say thank you for propping this guy up and being his cheerleader, because they always say behind a good man is an even better woman or whatever. And being a podcaster takes a tremendous amount of time, way more than people think it does. So thank you, Karen, for sharing your husband with us for these 4 years, 4.5 maybe. Thank you, Karen. This is almost as much your achievement day as it is Greg's. No offense, Greg.
Karen was absolutely fantastic in supporting me. She listened to me when I was thinking about doing this, when I was reaching out to different people like yourself and some other folks. And when I got started, I think there was a little bit of like, well, let's see how long this thing lasts, right? This is another one of Greg's interests that is going to fizzle out at some point. And she's been really supportive in suggesting people that I reach out to, which most of the time I do. And she's been really great in giving me some feedback as far as the episodes where it's like, oh, you should ask this guy this question, or you should ask them that question, or some of those types of things, which then I'm able to then incorporate into the next interview, the next episode is like, oh yeah, that would be a great question to bring up and ask somebody.
It's pretty amazing when you have this undiscovered gem of a cheerleader right there by your side. I mean, you knew she was your cheerleader in life, but when you're starting a podcast, which is, like you said, it could be a willy-nilly, oh, how long is he going to do this for? But to have her right there cheerleading and making suggestions and even recommending people, dude, that goes so far. I can't tell you how in my show, my wife has met and introduced me to and suggested some of the most amazing and fascinating people, and almost to a person they say yes. And it's really cool to just have, because I mean, you're coming at this from being a grandpa and being a grandson. You're coming at it from the male perspective of this thing, and kind of the things that you had intended to talk about or broach on the show. And then she's coming at it from a completely almost uninvolved spectator level. She's like, okay, well, I'm a girl, so I've never been, probably never going to be a grandpa. I've never been, probably never going to be a grandson. But she has her point of view and her perspective, which informs some of the suggestions that she has made and some of the guests that she has directed you toward. And I think it makes the show more well-rounded, if that makes any sense. Again, thanks, Karen.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And honestly, sometimes there might be a little bit of embarrassment because she'll take my business card with the all the grandpa stuff on it, and then she'll run up to people and say, "Oh, you need to be on the Cool Grandpa podcast, and you need to do this." And I'm a little bit like, "Oh, we're out to dinner," but she sees this grandfather and grandson or granddaughter having this interaction, and she's throwing my business cards out and making introductions for me, which is absolutely fantastic.
It is fantastic, and I wish I was in a restaurant where I was watching her do that on your behalf. It would tickle me to no end. What was it that you wanted to accomplish when you started this? I know that you said that you wanted to kind of, tell some good stories and sort of be a cheerleader for grandfathers, but was there something a specific goal that you had in mind other than that when you started this show?
I think what I wanted to do too with the show is not only for myself, but then also be able to go out and possibly talk to other groups, talk to people about like, hey, there's a resource that's not really being utilized as far as I can see. There's definitely more conversations going on now, but I feel like sometimes grandfathers, like I said, get called out to write checks for birthdays and sign and Christmas cards and things. And people that have had special relationships with grandfathers, that tends to impact them far more into their lives than maybe we really anticipate. And so being able to go out and talk to people and go, hey, look, if you're not an involved grandfather, if you're not being intentional about building this relationship, you need to do it, because I'm talking to people that are in their 50s, 60s, and plus. They're telling me stories about what really helped them get through middle school when they were 12 years old. And that came from their grandfather and a conversation or an interaction or something. And so it's both saying, hey, you're important, but then also being able to share the information I've gathered over these episodes to go, and this is a way that you can do it. Knowing that everybody's relationship's different, it's like, hey, there's multiple ways to build that relationship if you don't have it.
There is a musician, sometimes called the Piano Man, sometimes called the Entertainer, but usually just called Billy Joel. He put out a song years ago, and it's called Vienna. Are you familiar with this song?
Oh, yeah. I love it.
So I heard him on one of his albums. He did sort of a question and answer kind of thing. And somebody asked, well, what's the story with your song Vienna? Like, what is that even about? And he explained that he was visiting his father in Vienna, and he saw, Billy saw this old lady like sweeping the sidewalk. And he said she was like 85, 90 years old. And he said, Dad, like, what's with this old lady? Like, why is she sweeping the sidewalk? Like, why does she even have a job? Like, shouldn't she just be at home relaxing? And his dad said, Billy, we treat old people pretty poorly in America. And look at that lady. She has a job. She has a purpose. She feels needed. She feels, wanted. And that helps people, especially later on when they get a little bit lonely. It helps them give a purpose. It helps a purpose, and it helps give them a reason to get out of bed every day. And every time I see a new episode of your show hit my phone, hit my feed, I think about that statement that Billy Joel said, because what you're doing is you're shining a light on, the grandpas and what their contributions are in all aspects, whether it's, to their grandkids or even their kids, or just being a role model in general. And I think that is really, really cool what you're doing. And like I said, every time I see a new episode hit my feed, that's the first thing I think of. Besides, I can't wait to push play, but it's always that song. So again, well done. I love it. Do you find, or did you find previously, or maybe even now, that was the case, that we kind of just sweep old people under the rug and kind of forget about them, and moving on to bigger and better things?
Yeah, I think so. And I think too the demographics have changed somewhat. Because when I think of my grandfather helping to build a swing set, he seemed really ancient and beat up and old. And some of that is the how many people that were working factory jobs or were farmers or something along those lines. That's really decreased over time as we've moved into an information technology. Also, how long everybody's living has changed. I think at the turn of the 20th century, it was maybe guys lived into early 50s. And then by the time we're, just turned into the 21st century, I think that's now mid 70s. So
wow, that's huge.
So over that, period of time, we've gained like 20 something years in longevity. And along with that, that's also influence. And now we're seeing people taking better care of themselves in general. And so we've got a longer period of time to be grandparents and to be grandfathers, especially. We're not necessarily as beat up as the greatest generation and the silent generation and the generations before that. So I think the idea that we can have a longer influence has changed things quite a bit.
That sounds about right. I was talking to a guy a couple of months ago, and he was explaining that his great grandmother just passed away, and I was like, "You know your great grandparents? Like, whoa, what?" Like I barely knew my regular grandparents, and this dude's talking about his great grandparents. He's like, "Oh yeah, like we would go hang out all the time," and I'm just like, "What?" So that makes sense that since we're not having to work so hard and die early,
Right.
that we're going to be grandparents and we're going to be hanging out for a while. Do you think you accomplished what you were trying to get out of this? Like, do you think that you have nailed your goal? Like, are you done? 200, that's it. We're done. He did it. He did it, everybody. That's it. It's over.
Well, not quite ready to turn the lights out yet on the program. I do think that I have achieved what I was setting out to. I've made a number of, I don't know, alliances and friendships with people in the grandparenting space and in the grandparenting community. I've been able to talk to people, different experts that I've had on as repeat guests before that are from some fairly prestigious institutions. And so I feel like on that level, I've kind of hit what I wanted to hit, but I think there's still some more room to go, and there's some areas that I might even be able to dive a little deeper in.
Oh, sweet. I don't want to ask what they are because I don't want to spoil everybody. When you were talking about how grandparents are living longer and in some cases getting younger, um, it reminds me that there was a TV show back in the late 70s, early 80s. It was called Sanford and Son. Are you familiar with the show?
Yeah,
Well, I bet you didn't know this. How old are you right now?
I am 54.
You are 5 or 6, maybe 7 years older than Red Fox was when he started that show. As old as he looked in that show, he wasn't even 50 yet when he started that show, which blew me away. And also, Aunt B from the Andy Griffith show,
Hmm.
she was like 40.
Yeah.
She looked like she was 100. She was like 40. And one last thing, which nobody will care about, the television program Golden Girls. The oldest one, Estelle Getty, who played B. Arthur's mother, right?
Right. Yeah.
She was the youngest person in the cast.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? So everybody's getting younger, to your point. So that means they're going to be grandparents for a lot longer than, maybe our grandparents were grandparents. And so I think it's great that you are putting out there. I mean, this episode is not going to help anybody, but you've got 199 episodes that are going to help people become better grandparents. And I think you're doing the Lord's work, dude. There should be an award for that. Not like a Indian statue, or I'm sorry, Native American statue,
Right.
nothing like that. But like, there should be a Peabody or a Peasalot. There should be something that you get for all of your good works, dude. You need like a Red Cross trophy.
That'd be awesome. Well, and I hope it comes with a large check, because that was one of the disillusionments with starting the podcast, is that I thought within the first 15, 20 shows, I would be making like $10,000 an episode or something like
I'm gonna have to stop you right there. Um, you're not?
I might have
Uh,
missed the forms.
yeah, you know what? You you passed that line. There was a line when you were walking over to get your podcasting shingle, as it were. You walked right past that line. Yeah, it is not financially rewarding almost at all, especially at the beginning. If it ever does become financially rewarding, congratulations to both of the people who have made that happen. But I feel, and now, I mean, you're 200 episodes deep, that the gratification is it comes from within. It's from a job well done, and it's from being the mensch that you have shown yourself to be for these 4.5 years. Um, Okay. Do you have a favorite episode or a favorite guest?
Oh, good question. Um,
You've had so many.
yeah, I think there would be ones that are different for different reasons. So one that was, I think, almost about a year ago with Cynthia Covey Holler, and she had written and co-wrote the last book with Stephen Covey, which was Live Life in Crescendo. And that was, I love that one because that whole book and what she was putting forward was definitely like, hey, just because you kind of start to hit your middle age years, that doesn't mean you just kick back and start watching Jeopardy. It's, get involved, get busy, get doing something. And it's not just for the individual to do something, but also because our impact can be greater, whether it's with grandkids or a community or whatnot. So I thought that was a great book, and I thought that she had a lot of great information to hopefully inspire people to get moving. Another ones that I've liked to do.
Hold on one second. This young lady is Cynthia Covey Holler. Did you just say that was about a year ago?
Yes.
You ready for me to blow your mind?
Okay.
It was 6 months ago.
No way.
It was March 23rd of 2020. No, March 8th of 2024. Check you out. Isn't that crazy? Time does that.
Yeah.
Come on, who's next? Who else you got?
I think some of the experts that were around like youth and adolescent issues interviewed a gentleman. Right now my mind's going blank, so he'll probably kick me in the shins. But a gentleman that works with adolescents addictions. I've kind of had him on once a year because there's an update from Michigan, from the University of Michigan, that goes through a big survey of middle school and high school kids about, hey, what are you doing? What are you taking? How often are you doing this? And I find that's important for grandparents and even parents to know what's going on in the schools. What are your kids getting exposed to that you may not know about? And then being able to, educate us, because we came from the generation of like Cheech and Chong, man. It was like, some guys smoking weed behind the high school. And that was kind of, for the most part, what we knew. That, and then Miami Vice kicked in. So, it was that, and then it was running cocaine out of Miami. And there's so much different stuff going on now with whether it's THC stuff and vaping or whatever, that grandparents and parents need to be aware of that. And then also being interviewed and talking to people at the Clay Center for Young Healthy Minds, and talked a few times with them about the anxiety and depression and some of the things that hit kids and how it hits kids. Just so that, like I said, that as grandparents and parents, we're better armed and understand what's going on. But there's also the science behind it. So it's not just, oh, so-and-so got expelled from school, and so therefore there's this huge epidemic of whatever's going on. It's like, well, that might not be the case. So having a couple of those experts, and then also just the grandfathers, the grandchildren, especially the granddaughters, seem to have really interesting stories. And maybe that's because I'm hearing what a granddaughter, that reaction is versus what I've known as a grandson. And some of that has been where grandfathers, and again, I'll go back to kind of the farming, is where, these 12-year-old girls were expected to go out and sling hay bales along with brothers and cousins and everybody else and do some difficult things, where as they were going into middle school and high school, it was like, hey, I can do hard, both physical things and then just mentally taxing things. I mean, it's not fun slinging hay bales in the heat or disking a field with all the dust and everything else, but being able to go, hey, I was trusted with a big old tractor to go disc a field or go do some different things, and what that means to those people.
Real quick, I just want to give a shout out to that addiction specialist you mentioned. I think his name is Richard Capriola.
Yes. Yep.
Rick, is that him?
Yep.
Tell me more about the Clay Center, for those who may be not familiar so much with it.
Yeah, Gene Bernstein is somebody that he's both a grandfather as well as runs that youth center, and that's attached to Massachusetts General Hospital. They've got a relationship there, and what they do is they both work in a clinical settings as well as being able to do some research and gather research, right, for publications. And the last time I had him on, we were talking about the Surgeon General had come out a couple of years ago at this point with recommendations and kind of an alert saying, hey, look, teen loneliness is absolutely huge, and it's an epidemic, and it's actually been started and been growing since the mid 70s. And so what I talked with Gene about was what grandfathers can do. How do we get involved? How do we help kids? How do we maybe pull parents aside and say, hey, look, I'm seeing something here. You might want to check it out, follow up.
As a grandfather, this conversation would be happening?
Yeah, it would be like,
so it's not like I'm pulling my neighbor aside. This is me like pulling my kid aside and saying, hey, your kid. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, I've been hanging out with the grandson and granddaughter. Here's a couple of things I'm seeing, and because parents don't always see everything because it's a day in, day out interaction. So there's little changes, there's little things. Sometimes grandparents come into it having had a break for a few months or few weeks or whatever, and you might see a difference in behavior that the parents, because it's such a slow movement, may have missed.
Gotcha. Wow. Well, thanks, the Clay Center. Do you think that this is a little bit maybe off topic, but do you think that maybe COVID exacerbated that particular loneliness situation in teenagers?
I think so, and it may have fed into something that was already going on. Certainly, from what I learned about it was that this has been an issue that's been growing since the mid 70s, and so it hasn't been suddenly smartphones and suddenly COVID and suddenly these things. A lot of those can exacerbate what's going on, certainly, and I think with COVID, especially depending on the state, the area, the jurisdictions, and things like that, how long kids were out of school, not allowed to be in gyms, not allowed to play sports, whatever that is, that certainly led, I think, to enhancing that sense of isolation a lot of them have.
Gotcha. Do you have merch?
Right now,
I see, I'm going to interrupt you. I see you wearing a cool grandpa polo, but do you have merch that's available for other like-minded individuals?
I am in the process of getting some set up. So I'm using just from behind the scenes, I'm using Spotify, or not Spotify, everything's a fi, Printify, to create some mugs, create some polo shirts, some T-shirts that I'll be able to start to put out onto the website. So if folks like the logo, they like what they see, and they want to be a cool grandpa, or they want to give something to a cool grandpa, I am planning to have that out shortly.
Now, your logo has a big fat bushy beard and a mustache, almost a goatee, one might say, but you do not seem to have one at all. So what's going on there, buddy?
Basically, when I try to grow a beard now, it has a lot more white in it than I want. And so the wife definitely thinks it's on the sexier side. So Karen is definitely a pro beard, and even longer hair would be nice for her. But I'm a little bit more of like, I don't mind being mistaken for somebody that might be like 45, 48 versus 54.
35, 38. Yeah, I got you. Now, I don't know if listeners of your show are aware, but on October 16th of 2023, I really felt like it's been further away than that, but October 16th, 2023, none other than you, yourself, Greg Payne, the cool grandpa, was a guest on my show. Now, first, I want to apologize because Why did it take me 3 years to get you on my show? I don't know what is wrong with me. I'm a terrible, terrible person. But that was a great episode. I get a lot of good feedback on it. And even back then, almost a whole year ago, I says, Greg, you don't look old enough to be a grandfather. And people who aren't familiar, they can go back and listen to either that or listen to all 200 episodes of Greg's show and find out how he became a grandfather when he looks like he's 12. But that's neither here nor there. You told me about the merch. You told me about some of your favorite guests, which is hard. That's a big deal. That's hard, especially since you're up 200 episodes now, man. It's only going to get harder to pick your favorite child. Do you have a dream guest? Like, who is somebody that you, if guest lists were bucket lists, who's on your guests buckets lists?
Well, I will tell you one that I'm not going to get now was Jimmy Buffett. And the reason for that is ever since I started listening to his music, he's got this song, Captain and the Kid. And it's about his grandfather. And it's about his relationship with that grandfather. But having that relationship with a grandfather that used to sell ships, that used to do all these things, and then that grandfather aged out and is now raking leaves in grandma's backyard, but he wants to be out on the ocean. He wants to do that stuff. And then it goes into the grandfather died. And so I did reach out to his folks, and at least I made it through the first layer where it was like, hey, Greg, this sounds like a great idea. We're going to pass it up the food chain and see what's going on. And, I suspect that as his health was getting bad and interview requests comes in and things like that, it just wasn't going to work out. So he's one that I would have loved to talk about that experience that he had with his grandfather. The one that I think right now that I'd like to hear get on is Chris Paul, the former NBA player. Wrote a book called 61. And that book and some of the foundation work that he does is in memory of his grandfather that helped raise him and was kind of a pillar in the community. And he's a guy that I think I would really like to get in contact with and have him on to learn more about that relationship.
Interesting. I was completely unaware of this. How did you find out about it?
So one of those connections I was telling you about is his grandparents, Grandpa's United out of White Plains, New York, and they had him at one of their activities come in and give a presentation. And some of those folks had alerted me like, hey, Greg, have you heard of this and everything that Chris Paul's doing? And so he's somebody that I've reached out to. Even wrote a formal letter over to his foundation going, hey, I'd love to have him on here.
You mean like you wrote a letter with a pen and paper?
Yeah, I signed it too.
How did you get it there?
I put a stamp on
a what? You're saying stamps? There's e-stamps? Mm-hmm. This is a real stamp? A real actual tangible? How weird was that? Did it feel weird?
It did, but then I also thought too, like this might be a better way to get in. Somebody's going to receive it, at least somebody at the foundation, open it up, and it's either going to get passed on or whatever. But it probably have maybe a slightly better chance with a physical letter than just another email flying in. Although most people have been responsive to the email requests.
Very cool. How do you find your guests?
Some of these I'm just finding out through connections. Once I started getting, I think probably, I don't know how many episodes in, it was definitely asking people like, hey, who should I get in contact with that you think would be a great guest and has a great message to share? Or I might be doing some research on a particular topic. And then just off the Google thing and then sending off an email going, hey, I'd love to talk about men's mental health. Are you willing to come on the Cool Grandpa podcast and talk about that?
Cool. And so far that's been pretty successful for you?
Yeah, overall, most people have been saying yeah.
Is there anybody who's told you to take a flying leap? You don't have to give names. Is there anybody who's like, nah, bro, what are you, crazy?
Um, a couple, but they've been super, super nice and cool about it. And one was President Jimmy Carter. And that was probably a year into this. So right before he went into hospice and everything else, knew that he had retired, but it was like, hey, he would be a guy that would be cool to talk to about a family, about being a grandfather. And then also former President Bush wrote him.
Which one?
Too.
The first one or the second one?
Second one.
GW Jr.?
Mm-hmm. And their folks were really nice and came back and said, hey, just it's not going to fit into a schedule.
Wow, look at you reaching for the stars. That's pretty impressive. I want to talk about a thing that you did.
Okay. Oh, my grandpa's grandpa.
You wrote a children's book. It is called My Grandpa's Grandpa. I love this book. I think you know how much I love this book. We've talked about it a lot. I have given this book away to so many people. My Grandpa's Grandpa, where is it available, first of all? Where can people get it?
It is on Amazon, and it is also on my website, the Cool Grandpa Podcast.
.com?
Yeah, .com and .us.
.us.
Cool
Okay.
Grandpa.
Why did you write this children's book, My Grandpa's Grandpa? I don't want to spoil the story. It's almost, some would say, in the title. But why did you feel the need to write this book, My Grandpa's Grandpa?
Well, I thought it would be interesting from the standpoint of having this idea that as grandfathers, we tend to have about 100 years of family knowledge stored up in us from when we were little kids and hearing our grandparents' stories to what we can pass on to.
Really? How did you find that out?
Oh, that's just me. That's just my own guess, because with my grandfather being born, I think he's 1918, 1919, to today, that's, and understanding his stories and even my grandma's stories and stuff like that, that's like almost 100 years.
Oh, wow.
Just having that stored up, right? And I don't know every little thing, but I think if we think about it, a lot of us have that kind of I don't know, family knowledge, and some have more, some have less. But I thought the idea of being able to pass on some of that information, but then also with the way that kids ask questions about, like, hey, did you have this when you grew up? Like, hey, did you, what smartphone did you have when you were 12 years old? And it's like, smartphones weren't a thing when I was 12 years old. Let me tell you what was going on. That sort of thing, where it's being able to share those insights and try to tie in the two generations, right? What's going on with the grandson, and then what's his world like, and then trying to figure out, okay, so what's the relationship to what my grandfather might have been going through, either at the same time or just in general.
For those eagle eye viewers who saw me texting just now, I wasn't being rude. I was actually texting Greg. So the last time we talked, in an official capacity, like whatever, back in October on my show, when we talked about My Grandpa's Grandpa, you had mentioned that there might be some more stories in that same series. Is that still a thing that's happening? Has it happened and I missed it?
No, I've been starting to put those stories together. These are kids' books, so they're not, huge novels or anything else. But one is the next oldest grandchild. Her name's Nora, and the idea of Nora and Grandpa's big adventure. Something along that line of like us going off and having a big adventure together and doing that.
That was a test and you failed. So I'm pretty sure that when you were on my show, I feel like this is my idea that I pitched you, but I might be just remembering myself in a more grandiose fashion than I should. maybe you pitched it to me. I don't remember, but so my grandpa's grandpa, that would be, like if your grandkid is reading this, and this would be like your grandfather, right, that they're talking about. I'm pretty sure that we talked about my grandpa's grandma.
Yeah.
And my grandma's grandpa and my grandma's grandma. Where's the others at? Come on, bro. What are you doing? You got a whole series here.
I do want to do that. My grandpa's grandma. I do want to do that one because breaking news here. So it turns out my grandmother was working as a shoe saleswoman in Beverly Hills, and Cesar Romero, the great, sexy Cesar Romero, the Joker,
the Joker himself,
back in the day, was hitting on my grandma and was asking my grandma out.
I don't know if that's gonna be a story for children.
No. But it's just that it's I wanted to bring something a little fascinating to the podcast.
That sounds really cool. I like that. Oh my gosh. You know what? You can just email me that story. That sounds awesome. But also, okay, so your wife, Karen, she's grandma, right? To your grandpa?
Yes.
Well, she also has a grandparents, two of each, one could argue. So my grandpa's, and I think we even talked about like my grandpa's other grandpa, right? Because you had two of them.
Yep.
Come on, dude, you're killing me with this. I mean, it's been almost a year, and you still don't have 11 more books out. What's going on?
I'm dragging my feet on this.
Oh my gosh. Hey. So what do you think is the future of the Cool Grandpa podcast? What do you see? I know, like when you go to a job interview, they say, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" I don't care about that. I care about where you see yourself in 5 years. I want to know where you see the podcast in 1 year. Are you going to make it to 300? I know you want to do it in 1 year, but are you going to make it to 300?
I'm not sure. At this point, I'm kind of playing it by ear and seeing what's going on. I'd like to, and like I said, I'd really like to be able to get to be kind of the source for grandfather information. Whether it's going to be faith-based stuff, or it's going to be just fun, wacky stuff, or it's going to be kind of heavy information type stuff, whatever that is, really kind of use it as maybe a spoke for either with some other organizations, some other folks, or even just some other activities that I'm going to end up doing.
So it sounds like you're a little on the fence about whether you're going to get to 300, but I'm going to go ahead and promise everybody listening and everybody watching, Greg will get to 300. That's a promise from Steve Owens that Greg will do 100 more shows. The world needs what you're doing. Especially, I don't feel like these times are getting any easier or any better. We might be sort of just dwindling into decay, but what you're doing is, it's kind of helping stave that off a little bit. And I think you're going to keep doing it. It's too cool. You're too cool. You're too grandpa. Wait a minute. My grandpa's grandpa. It's available. Did we say Amazon and
on the website? Yep.
And where can people find? I mean, I know that people are listening to your show right now, so they obviously found it. But if they happen to be sharing this episode with somebody else, or if they happen to be watching on YouTube, where can they find the rest of your show? Where's your show? Like, where is it? I'd say broadcast. Where can they find your show, whether it's audio or video?
Apple and Spotify, most of the major podcast applications that are out there. And then also the website has links to all the episodes as well. So cool-grandpa.us or .com will take you there, and then you can do
Is it both?
It's both. I've got the .com forwarding over to the .us.
Gotcha. And what if somebody was looking for that mysterious episode 1? Where would they find that? Is that on your website?
think it's on the website. I'll have to go back and check that one. And just a quick synopsis on that one was I interviewed a buddy of mine, Dean Nelson, and talked to him about what it was like to start having granddaughters, because he came from having all boys, well, 3 boys and a girl. And so he knew how to really interact with the boys. And then I was talking to him about what's it like now having a bunch of little granddaughters that you're having to interact with. And so that was a great episode.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure everybody is on the edge of their seat looking and waiting for episode 1 to come out. That sounds weird. Welcome to episode 200. We're all still waiting for the first episode. Well, Greg, look, I know this is your show, but I have to ask this. This is what I say on my show, but is there anything we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you about that you specifically wanted to talk about today? Like, did we cover the big bits?
I think we covered the big bits. I think the one thing I would say is that I really appreciate you for being one of the mentors. The introductions that you've made for me have been great. The advice you've given me has been great. People that want to get into podcasting thinking like what we were joking about, that you're going to hit 10K in revenue within the first 30 episodes. You can't do that. You got to come at it with a little bit of a punk rock attitude of you've got a mic, you got a system, and you're just going out there and you're doing it. And if money comes your way, that's great, but don't expect it.
Yeah, I think it was the great Mahatma Gandhi. I think he said, be the change you want to see in the world. And so as far as podcasting, just be the podcast you want to hear, right? Like, do this for yourself, but also for what you think is missing, right? Which is why people usually start. Hopefully that's why they start them. It's not for the money. A lot of people start and they want to be Joe Rogan in 6 months. It's never going to happen, or should it? But I think that those are wonderful words. Don't go into this with the expectation that you're about to be rich. I think that's the biggest contributing factor for why people normally don't even get to 100 episodes. A little backstory. I was the first Fascination Street podcast, but I wasn't the only one. I might be now, but I think I had been doing this about a year when I found out there was like 3 or 4 other podcasts called Fascination Street, and they're all gone. Nobody, I'm telling you, nobody gets to 100. Almost nobody gets to 100. So you're doing great. You're killing it. Here's to 100 more. I'm expecting, I'm counting on 100 more. I expect 100 more out of you, young man. And it brings me such joy every time I see an episode hit my phone. Every single time, it brings a smile to my face. I really enjoy seeing what you're doing and who you're doing it with, and you're doing the Lord's work, man. You're making the world a better place, and that's pretty special. Nobody does that these days.
God, thanks.
So, kudos to you. Kudos to episode 200, my man. I can't believe it's already 200. I can't believe it's already been 4 years.
Yeah,
that's the part that blows me away. Like, wow, just wow. I did it at the beginning. I'm gonna do it now too. I backed away so I didn't blow out anybody's eardrums, but
right.
Man, well done, dude. Hats off. If I was wearing one, I'd take it off. I'm very proud of you. That sounds really silly and, I don't know, vain on my part, but I'm very proud of what you have accomplished and the fact that you're still doing it. You're a man of your word, and your integrity knows no bounds. So, well done, sir. And seriously, everybody go get this book. I know. He probably talks about this book more than you want, but guess what? I don't talk about it more than you want. Go get this book. My grandpa's grandpa. This book is amazing, and I'm also expecting more books in that series, sir.
Okay.
Well, listeners, all the cool kids. What do you call your listeners? I know you're the cool grandpa. What do you call your listeners?
I haven't thought of any kind of cool name for them yet.
Well, it's just got to be the cool kids, right?
The cool kids. I love that
because that encompasses the parents and the grandkids and hell, that encompasses the grandparents. Everybody was a kid.
Yep.
I'm thinking about the cool kids. Mine, my listeners are streetwalkers. That came from a guest. I loved it. I kept it. And I'm giving you cool kids. All right, all you cool kids. That's what you got to do. Okay, cool kids. Like that. Greg, I turn your show back over to you, man. Tell everybody what's up and where they can find you and all the things. I've been Steve Owens from Fascination Street. Thank you. I'm so honored that I got to do this with you. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're welcome. And folks, cool kids, what we'll do is in the show notes for this episode, I'm going to put the links to my conversation with Steve on in here so you can go back and listen to that. And then I will also see if I can dig out episode number 1, the super secret episode, and maybe I'll put a link into the show notes as well for episode 1, and you can hear maybe hopefully the improvement from that first show into this show. So, I'm going to say goodbye to Steve, and I hope to talk to everybody. And remember, until next time, stay cool.